Okay, I see the MHEC team is in place. We now have officially a quorum, so we can proceed. Okay, so I believe who we have, we've got Casey Motz, the chair, we've got Sanjay Rai, our MHEC secretary, and then we've got the two deputy secretaries, Emily Dowell and Elena, who was here earlier, back again. Okay, so I don't know what sequence, how y'all want to go about doing. Mr. Secretary, you on there?
Yes, sir, we're here.
Okay, since you're the boss, you tell me who goes first and how we're going to do this.
Yeah, so we have a presentation. We will go in a certain order. If you're ready, we can start.
Okay, we're just going to get the volume up a little bit so we can hear everybody a little.
Sure.
Okay, Mr. Secretary, okay, back to you.
Sure, thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the Education, Energy, and Environment Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today, but especially thank you for allowing us to be here virtually. I am Sanjay Rai, Secretary for the Maryland Higher Education Commission. Here today with me is Chair Motz of the Commission, Deputy Secretary Elena Quiroz-Levanis, and Assistant Secretary Academic Affairs Emily Dow, and Megan Music, our Director for External Affairs. We are here at the committee's request to provide a broad but practical update on three areas. First, Maryland's statewide higher education planning. Second, implementation of the academic program approval changes enacted in House Bill 1244. And third, the administration and safeguarding of state financial aid, particularly scholarship utilization, system modernization, and the guaranteed access grant incident. Our goal is to provide you with clear status updates, lessons learned, and forward-looking consideration tied to our core statutory responsibilities, and to flag where your continued guidance will be most valuable as implementation continues. To start, I would like to introduce Chair Casey Motz to briefly introduce and give context of our commission and agency responsibilities. Can you move to the next slide?
Thank you, Secretary Rai. Thank you, sir. And good afternoon, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the committee. Thank you very much for having us today. Next slide, please. This briefing will be organized in the same way that the agency is doing the work. So we'll start with the statewide context, who we serve, the scale of Maryland's post-secondary system, and then we'll walk through the academic program approval, both the volume of the work that MHEC manages and how HB 1244 from the 2024 session has changed program review and duplication analysis. And then from there, we'll shift to financial aid, which you'll see is number 4 on our outline, the scale of the state's investment, what the data show about utilization, what we're doing to reduce residual funds between award and payment, and how the agency is modernizing our legacy system through a new Maryland Student Information System, MDSys. We're going to try not to have too many acronyms. We don't want to be too involved in EduSpeak, but MDSys is an acronym that we're very excited about that you'll hear more about. We will also address, as the Secretary mentioned, the Guaranteed Access Grant incident from last summer. What happened, how our students were protected, and what safeguards are now in place. And finally, we'll provide a high-level exploratory discussion of scholarship consolidation for early dialogue only. No proposal is under development. No action is anticipated this year. This is just for informational purposes for you as lawmakers. But before we move into the in-depth discussion on some of these meaty topics, I wanted to just quickly clarify the structure of MHEC because it can be a little bit confusing. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So the agency and the board, the commission overseeing the agency, have the same name, which I found to be confusing when I joined the board overseeing the agency. So the board overseeing the agency is called the Maryland Higher Education Commission, and it is a statutorily established independent governing body appointed by the governor. And there are 12 of us, a student member. The student member has a 1-year term. The rest of us have 5-year terms, all of us appointed by the governor. So what we do as a governing body, as a commission, is we set policy direction, adopt regulations, approve statewide plans, and exercise oversight consistent with your intent, with legislative intent. Really all of the day-to-day work is done by Secretary Ryan and his team, who you'll be hearing from in a moment. So Secretary Ryan and his team oversee the day-to-day operations, program administration, financial aid, compliance activities, institutional oversight of our many colleges and universities, and implementation of policy that the oversight board, the commission that I lead, sets. So, but the professional staff really runs the agency day to day, and that separation is intentional. It ensures transparency and accountability while allowing the public servants who work at the agency to operate efficiently within their statutory authority. So, just with that explanation, I will turn it over to the people who make the magic happen day to day. Back to Secretary Ryan and his team.
Thank you, Chair Martz. Can we go to the next slide, please? So to frame today's discussion, it also helps to start with the scale and complexity of the system MHAC coordinates. Maryland's post-secondary system serves approximately 345 credit-earning students statewide. Community colleges remain the primary access point for many first-generation adult and transfer-oriented students. Public four-year institutions continue to show strong performance with six-year graduation rates nearly 66%, which reflects both solid outcomes and the continued importance of persistence and completion efforts. MHAC's oversight and convening authority positions us uniquely to coordinate across the system, align education with workforce and economic priorities, and support the administration's statewide goals. That alignment is especially important as Maryland continues producing strong outcomes in critical fields like healthcare, education, STEM, and also building capacity in our emerging sectors of the economy. Can we go to the next slide? In this slide, you will see Maryland's ecosystem is one of the most diverse and capable in the nation, comprising 57 colleges and universities and over 130 private career schools. Each sector plays a distinct role in meeting student needs and supporting Maryland's economy. On our 57 colleges and universities, we have 16 outstanding community colleges serving as the state's largest workforce trainers and primary gateway for transfer. The university system of Maryland with 12 institutions anchor the research enterprise and graduate education capacity. Morgan State University, as Maryland's designated preeminent public urban research university and an HBCU, advances both access and innovation. St. Mary's College of Maryland serves as the state's public honors college, a model of civic learning through the liberal arts. And the 15 state-aided independent institutions expand academic options across the state and cultural depth across the state. Finally, private career schools deliver targeted career-aligned training in areas like allied health, trades, and technology. In addition to these entities, we also work with the Maryland's regional higher education centers, out-of-state institutions physically operating in Maryland, and out-of-state institutions providing distance education to Maryland residents, post-secondary institutions that qualify for a religious exemption, and other post-secondary institutions and training facilities that qualify veterans to access GI education benefits. This is the landscape the state relies on, and the system MHAC is charged with coordinating, regulating, and supporting. In addition to our post-secondary education systems, we also have several national partners, which you will see on the next slide. Can we go on the next slide? Under our teams, I think a slide before this. Yes. I think right after this, there's a slide. Yes, thank you. Under our team's leadership, Maryland has been able to attract national organizations and philanthropic partners to accelerate reform in ways that align with Maryland's goals and legislative priorities. These are not one-off projects. They are targeted partnerships to improve outcomes, especially for students at broad access institutions. As one example, we are deploying the Maryland Transfer Intensive in partnership with the Aspen Institute. This is a multi-year effort helping institutions execute strategic transfer excellence plans with an ambitious statewide goal to raise the 6-year transfer rate to Maryland 4-year institutions from 23% for the 2017-2018 academic year community college cohort to 40% for the 2030-2031 cohort. That matters because community colleges are the primary access point for thousands of Marylanders, and transfer success is one of the most direct ways to increase attainment and economic mobility. These national partnerships strengthen the evidence base behind our planning and our program review work, and they support the outcomes the General Assembly expects: access, completion, and workforce alignment. We are very grateful for the General Assembly's partnership and guidance on post-secondary education throughout the state, but we would be remiss if we didn't highlight the recent federal impacts on our post-secondary education landscape. The next slide. The key part of the context of our work right now is what's happening at the federal level. We are navigating a period of volatility in Washington that is putting stress on the traditional partnerships between the federal government and the state agencies of higher education. The federal landscape is shifting in ways that affect oversight, financial aid, and research. 3 areas that directly impact Maryland institutions and our students. First, we are seeing signs of a structural shift that places higher education more directly into workforce policy framework, which risks narrowing how colleges and universities are viewed from institutions of learning, research, and civic development to workforce training centers. Second, the federal financial aid system is changing rapidly. Pell Grant policy is expanding to include short-term workforce programs, but doing that well requires fast validation processes and new operational demands on states and institutions. These changes are occurring alongside uncertainty tied to the Pell formula and potential new constraints on federal student loans and graduate education, shifting more financial pressure towards family and potentially states. Finally, proposed federal budget reductions for major research agencies such as NIH and NSF could significantly affect Maryland's research institutions and the broader innovation economy. In this environment, Maryland's ability to align programs, support students through complex aid processes, and protect public investment becomes even more important. This leads us into an update on academic program approval. I will pass this over to my colleague, Emily Dow.
Okay, Ms. Secretary, before we do that, because the way you structured it, I don't want to go through all this without giving the committee an opportunity to maybe ask questions, because you've sort of compartmentalized this by person presenting, and the topics are pretty distinct.
Sure.
So before we go to program approval presentation from Dr. Dow, are there any questions for the Secretary or for Chair Motz? We're going to go to Senator Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Of the universities under our umbrella, how many have achieved R1 Carnegie Research Certification?
Thank you for that question, Senator Watson. We have 3 universities with R1. As you know, Morgan State University will be becoming R1 very, very soon. That's a great news. They will be the second HBCU in the country to be R1. Let me also share a very positive news on Morgan State University. They have just joined the club of 100 topmost patent producing universities in the country, and they are the first HBCU to be in that group.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, any additional questions? We're going to go to Senator Carrozza.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and I also want to thank you for the extra effort you make to come down to my district where I represent 3 institutions of higher education: Salisbury University, University of Maryland Eastern Shore, and Warwick Community College. With that said, you pointed out in your national partnerships and highlighted this Maryland Transfer Intensive program by the Aspen Institute. I wanted to better understand, especially in my district where we seem to have pretty solid transfers from Warwick to Salisbury University, but we've had challenges in the past with transfers to other Maryland universities. Can you just give an update on how that program is addressing easing the burden of transfer?
Yeah, thank you very much, Senator. It is always a pleasure to visit your district. And there are outstanding institutions there. University of Maryland Eastern Shore is going to have a veterinarian program, first in the state, only second at an HBCU. We can't wait for the opening. Hopefully we'll visit sometimes in fall. Also on national partnerships, Warwick Community College is partnering on many of these partnerships. One that I would like to highlight for you today is a partnership with Google and DataKind. They are building AI-supported advising model for the Warwick Community College. 100% funded by Google. Google will develop the platform. They will run it for 2 years for Warwick Community College, and they will transfer it to them. So great work is happening there. Also, through Arnold Ventures, statewide about $14 million. They're also part of an accelerated associate degree program. So great work is happening at all those 3 universities. Transfer is always a challenge. It's a national challenge. When students transfer from community college to 4-year universities, sometimes they lose some credits. All the credits do not transfer. The goal that we are working with the Aspen Institute has a transfer playbook. They just developed that playbook, and they were looking for one state where they wanted to implement that. They looked at several states. They interviewed me and other professionals in the agency, and they decided to come to Maryland because they thought that Maryland has the best chance to improve the transfer program. So transfer in some of the universities, as you mentioned, it works. In some, we see tremendous opportunities for improvement. Improvement such that students, when they transfer, they don't lose credits. Sometimes students can get joint admissions. So they should see the seamless transfer. They should not see this as 2 different institutions. So we are working with all community colleges and 4-year universities. Broader plans will be announced sometimes in mid-April. At that time, you will learn more about what kind of partnerships are developed, how they will be implemented, and how students will benefit from it.
Thank you.
Here, let me, this isn't really a question. I just want to make a comment and maybe get a response from some of you. There's been a lot written recently about the role of higher ed in the future of our country in terms of more and more of the private sector, big companies, your Microsofts, your Googles, Amazons, have decided that they're not going to wait to deal with their labor force issues. I think, Secretary, we've talked about this by waiting for students to come from the universities. They're going to increasingly are doing in-house certifications on AI. I mean, it used to be, similarly with apprenticeships are on the rise big time, and apprenticeships used to be just for the trades. Now it's healthcare, tech, and some other things. And so one of the questions really, I think fundamentally for higher ed right now is when you come to the state in terms of funding, you know, I think states are now starting to look at outcomes. It's not just about sending money to our universities. They're looking for, students are looking for ROI when they're making an assessment about whether to go to school and take on a lot of debt. Data, and private sector is not looking to hire students whose skill set are pretty much moot and antiquated and 3 years later. And so they're doing it a lot of in-house. Like Amazon's taking warehouse workers and transforming them into tech workers in-house. They're not, again, sitting around waiting for the university system in Maryland to send them students with stale credentials 3 years later. So it just from a, and so the reason I even bring this up is we're in a budget crunch. You know, the universities are looking at potential cuts. How would you respond to, you know, state legislatures around the country looking at their higher ed institutions and saying, you know, maybe the measurement by which we want to fund these institutions is changing? Like right now, I'm looking at statistics that says 50% of all the job postings on Indeed, this is Indeed, 50% do not require a college degree anymore. That is substantially different than 20 years ago. The number of apprenticeships is up like, you know, I don't know how many fold from 10, 20 years ago. So we have this shift, and the role of higher ed, you know, in terms of the future labor force of our nation does come back to resources and funding higher ed and return on investment and outcomes. And so it's more of a statement. I just would love to hear any of your thoughts on how you see our system responding to the changing landscape.
So thank you. That's an excellent question. And I think, you know, if in order to discuss that, you know, in full generality, we need a little bit more time. But your observations are correct. There is a disruption in higher education and generally as well. Certainly, digital economy, things are shifting very fast, and higher education is trying to catch up. When these kind of disruptions came in past, they allowed higher education enough time to adjust, adopt, and respond. What is new this time is that this is just too rapid. Good news is that Maryland higher education institutions are moving forward, whether it's AI, quantum, life sciences. They are shifting their curriculum. They are bringing business industries. They're bringing all these partnerships. You saw some on the other slide. That has become an important or necessary part of delivering high quality education. From the state of Maryland, fortunately, this is the time when we are developing our new state plan for higher education. That should be, legislative requirement is that should be ready by the end of June. We are working very hard with business organizations, higher education, other community organizations to make sure that we adopt a post-secondary education system in our state that is contemporary. It looks at the current issues, economic mobility, as you raised. So within that, some of the differences that you will see, in 2013, Maryland Assembly passed a law that by 2025, 55% of the Marylanders will have a baccalaureate degree. And at that time, what was happening? Global economy was emerging. President Obama asked for a baccalaureate completion nationwide. And as a result, Maryland General Assembly was one of the first in the nation to respond to it. At that time, goal was to get a baccalaureate degree. Today, getting a baccalaureate degree is not sufficient to give you a job that gives you family-sustaining wages. So in our new state plan, we will have a statewide goal, attainment goal, but we will also have something called degree production goal, lighthouse credentials, a certain percent of lighthouse credentials in the sense that students who attain these lighthouse credentials, they start earning family-sustaining wages, or they are on a pathway to earn a family sustaining wage within a certain number of years. Other part, I will say that sometimes, the trainings that are provided by these companies are good for the time being, but I think the relevance of higher education will remain, and I think it will probably shift more towards research innovation. If you look at artificial intelligence, Maryland institutions are one of the best in the nation. Has anyone used ChatGPT today? If you use ChatGPT today, then ChatGPT's use large language models. So one of the most popular ones are written by students from University of Maryland. So University of Maryland is quite ahead. Johns Hopkins University, AI in healthcare and defense, they are quite ahead. Morgan State University is one of the best in the nation in terms of what's called digital twinning. University of Maryland, Baltimore County is doing great work on digitization of supply chains and other things. So research innovation will be important. New products, new IPs, startups, new companies will be created. I'm hopeful that they will be created on one of our campuses. Next Google of AI hopefully will come from one of our institutions. From the kind of work we see, the kind of professionals, almost 2,000 professionals, world-class professionals in artificial intelligence are working in our state, mostly affiliated to our institutions of higher education. So the future for Maryland in this, I see very, very good. We do have to plan better, and we have to move faster.
Okay, I've got Senator Harris is up next.
Appreciate it, Mr. Chair, and I just want to piggyback on your question. I know, Secretary Rye, you heard me mention this like multiple times over the past couple of years, even in my role in appropriations, and I think the chair hit it the nail on the coffin pretty well. I think we need to define it a little bit more, and then maybe you have it in your brief. I didn't see it, but maybe the next time you come to us, a more detailed plan of what that will look like in terms of focusing more heavy on certifications as well as a degree program. Now, I'm not saying degree programs are not important, but you heard me say a long time ago when I got out of the military, the one thing I had was my certifications. I did not have not one degree yet. I didn't have my bachelor's yet. I didn't have my master's yet. However, I was able to get a full-time, good-paying job to support my family. Family of one, that'd be just me. I did get married at the time, but was able to support my family, and after that was still able to go to college, get my bachelor's degree and my master's degree, and without having to worry about that particular debt. And so, as the chair was talking about, as things are changing, and it has been changing for the past couple of years, right? It's not something that took place yesterday. It's been years, right? And so I think we need a better plan for our Maryland State schools across the board to shift a tad bit to focus a little bit more on these certification programs to get people into the workforce to be able to support their families, as well as giving them an opportunity to, in some cases, have that tuition assistance, have those scholarships from these companies to be able to help them with their four-year degree as they move forward. So it's just a thought, maybe how we need to start shifting now versus, because the time is now, right? It's not tomorrow. We already are there.
Senator, great observation, and your background is always on our mind. Many of our students now will follow the path that you had. That's why I think we are almost finishing our planning for state plan for higher education, and we'll share that with you to give you bits and pieces there. 2013 law required 55% associate degrees or higher. That was the goal. Now all certificates like the ones that you had will also be part will also be included in that goal. And we'll be happy to give you a presentation on how we are addressing this issue. We feel very good about how we are doing it, and we'll share the plan in the next few months with you. Time is not now, Senator. I think in some ways time was yesterday, but we are catching up very fast.
Okay, Senator Watson, and then let's move to the program approval topic, which is a hot one. Senator Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. This is a very, very urgent piece for me, the conversation you were just having. You know, for somebody like me who has a PhD in engineering and a master's and a bunch of other degrees, I found myself unemployable once the federal government shut down as an IT consultant for over 25 years. And when the government opened back up, the skill sets they were looking for were all new, emerging technology, AWS, Azure, you know, cloud certifications and all of these things. However, I look at the certifications as a moment in time. A certification today could be obsolete in 5 years, and then what do you do? And so I'm wondering if you, with the MHEC body, are really taking a good look at trends over time, because the age of the knowledge worker is quickly fading. And there are a lot of folks that will have to be retrained and retooled in technology when that might not have been what they were studying as an undergrad, you know, many, many years ago. How are we staying on top of these trends and recognizing that the state cannot absorb all of the people who are going to lose their jobs or be displaced in the upcoming years? We just physically cannot do it. And if they aren't retrained and retooled, what options will they have, and how is MHEC trying to get ahead of that?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That's again a great question. And your degree in electrical engineering gives you, Senator, so many different, you have such a strong foundation that upskilling, reskilling with someone like you would be much easier. So as I said about a state plan for higher education, upskilling and reskilling in the emerging areas, emerging sectors is a very, very important part. And this is where all our academic institutions, especially community colleges, are going to play a very, very important role. So suppose someone is looking for Azure certification that you talked about, Microsoft, or Amazon's AWS and others. You will see that very quickly our institutions are partnering with these companies and offering those certificates at a rate that's highly affordable. So the plan talks about this part and how our post-secondary education system as it is configured today will address the kind of things that are emerging in our economy, workforce needs, economic competition, and preparing students basically for a very fast changing world, preparing students for jobs that do not exist today. But all this disruption, most of the analysis and research that we see, like AI will not replace humans, right? But AI will replace humans who use AI may replace humans who don't. And in the end, more jobs will be created. Role of higher education in our partnership with legislature is to make sure that our institutions are ready to adapt to that situation and offer affordable options for reskilling, upskilling for our residents.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Secretary. Let's move on to Dr. Dow. I think you're going to make a presentation about academic approval process. And so, Dr. Dow, are you on the line here? Do we have him?
I am. Good
Okay.
afternoon.
Oh, I'm sorry. Doctor, I said he. She. Is she on the line? Okay, Emily. Okay. Okay, the floor is yours, and we're going to talk about program approval, academic approval.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and committee members. I have been asked to provide updates on the implementation of House Bill 1244 from the 2024 legislative session. Before I dive into that, could we hop to the next slide? I would like to provide just some updated statistics for you all. Over the past 2 calendar years, MHEC has processed nearly 1,100 academic proposals. This includes title changes, modifications, suspensions, a variety of different actions, all from our degree granting institutions. This workload reflects a higher education system in Maryland that is both resilient and responsive. During this period, we approved 182 new academic degree programs, 93 of which are in STEM and lighthouse sectors. These sectors, ranging from life sciences to aerospace, align directly with the Maryland Department of Commerce's strategic initiatives and reflect Governor Moore's vision for targeted economic growth. Our recent approvals prioritize access to these high-demand professions. This includes expanded nursing and teacher education programs, while championing landmark developments such as the Meredith School of Osteopathic Medicine in Hagerstown. And as you heard from Secretary Rye earlier, an upcoming School of Veterinary Medicine at UMES. Slated to open in 2027, the UMES school will be the first for our state and only the second veterinary medicine program at an HBCU, addressing critical shortages in animal and public health. Before I continue into House Bill implementation, I really do want to give a shout out to my team, my academic affairs team, for all that they do to contribute to these statistics and the reviews that they do. So now let me turn to House Bill 1244 updates. Next slide, please. House Bill 1244 fundamentally reshaped our review process for academic programs. I'm pleased to report that MHEC has stayed on schedule for implementation, and let me highlight some of those major accomplishments. First, the development of the workforce needs analysis. Under House Bill 1244, program review is no longer isolated from economic planning. In partnership with the Departments of Labor and Commerce, we have established a unified workforce needs analysis. This analysis, published in 4 detailed appendices to the state plan, serve as the objective baseline for program development. Institutions are already leveraging these data for programs like Johns Hopkins Masters in Data Analytics Engineering and Bowie's Risk Management Program. Second, we have also established the Program Review Process Advisory Council, what we shorthand call PRPAC, which I'll mention a couple times. So the Program Review Process Advisory Council, which meets monthly to ensure our processes and policies are informed by a representative group of college presidents, provosts, and faculty. Third, as of October 1st, we implemented the Letter of Intent process for graduate programs. This serves as an early radar for potential duplication and an opportunity to facilitate collaboration before a full proposal is even drafted for a new program. And finally, we redefined substantial modification, raising the threshold from 33% to 50%. This allows institutions to update programs more rapidly to match the speed of industry. Next slide. Moving these mandates into practice has revealed several operational hurdles. Since the October 1st of the Letter of Intent process, we've processed more than 50 letters of intent. Timely responses, ideally within 4 weeks per our PRPAC hopes, with current staffing levels, places significant administrative pressure on our team, and we are working diligently to improve processes as we continue to refine the review of letters of intent. Second, a key assessment in the review process is distinguishing between existing resources and new resources. Ensuring institutions clearly articulate these resource assessments is critical to the program review process. And finally, we have developed draft regulations to define unreasonable duplication and unnecessary duplication. Per changes reflected in House Bill 1244, we have two duplication considerations. Unreasonable program duplication, which would cause harm to the state or students attending institutions of higher education in Maryland, or unnecessary program duplication in violation of the state's equal educational opportunity obligations under state and federal law. We are currently discussing the standards for each of these with the PRPAC. Part of that work is refining how we measure or how we define harm to the state or harm to students to ensure that our standards are fair, measurable, and do not unintentionally stifle innovations in fields like artificial intelligence. We value the committee's guidance as we finalize these regulatory standards. That is my update on House Bill 1244. And with the committee's approval, I'll turn it over to my colleague, our Deputy Secretary.
Okay, why don't we, again, let's do this, take questions for Dr. Dowell on program approval. I have one. Okay, what kind of training do the new, I mean, we've got all these relatively new program approval processes, and in terms of the commission members, what kind of training are they getting in terms of those changes? Because I think apparently, my understanding, at least in one case, there was a disapproval of an undergrad program using some of the old rules. And so that just does beg the question about training for your members. So could you just give me something on that front?
Absolutely. And we have recognized training is overdue. Prior to House Bill 1244, we were on a pretty regular schedule, at least once a year, to gather all the colleges and universities for a statewide training. Since House Bill 1244 was approved, we've been working to implement all of these changes. We're slotted to have another training this year. And we do have a draft administrative guide that we hope to publish. Because of all of these changes, how quickly we have been implementing them, we are trying to make those changes in that administrative guide in one big fell swoop. We've also communicated regularly with the campuses when we have implemented these changes so that they are aware, but we recognize that we do need to have a statewide training and release our administrative guide in short order.
And our commissioners get regular updates from our AAG's office and also from Dr. Dow's colleagues and that team about these changes.
Yes, I would just add to that as the chair of the commission, someone who receives the trainings. We do consult regularly with the Assistant Attorney General who represents the agency. Most of the program approval action happens at the agency level. There are not many cases that make it to the commission. But I think, Chair Feldman, you raise a good point. When they do come to us, we need to make sure we're completely up to speed on the statute and the regulations enacting the statute.
Let's go to the members. We're going to start with Senator Hester, then to Senator Brooks.
Hi there. My ears perked up when I heard you talking about the artificial intelligence, and I was just curious. At the end, you said unduly burdensome, and I'm curious is there a particular thing that you're trying to address, and could you talk more about that, and where specifically is that in the bill?
Sure. I wouldn't. It's not necessarily unduly burdensome. It's to make sure we have clear, transparent, and consistent standards. And right now, the heavy lift is when we've identified that there's duplication between an existing program and a proposed new program, does that duplication cause harm to the state or to the student? And what does that mean? What does it mean to cause harm to the state or student? One argument has been made that duplication would cause harm to the state by not, let me articulate this clearly, by not allowing duplication, we would cause harm to the state because we would stifle innovation in growing fields. It's something that has been discussed quite a few times with our campus presidents and provosts through that PRPAC. We have not finalized what that standard looks like, but it's an example of those discussions to make sure we have, again, transparent and clear standards as to what it means to have a duplicative program that would cause harm to the state or student. I hope that answers your question.
Senator Brooks.
Thanks, Chair. And that's the direction I was going. You know, I knew the bill had included a mechanism to protect HBCUs when it comes to course duplication. And I also thought that that if an argument is made by one of the HBCUs saying that there is duplication, what is the mechanism of the process that you go through to address or satisfy those particular concerns?
Absolutely. So as of right now, we have proposed a two-step process, and in reality, it is the process that we have been using currently. So first, we identify whether or not there's duplication. We look at things like the intended employment outcomes, the courses being offered, the curriculum, whether or not it's a professional degree versus a more scholarly academic degree. We look at the program very holistically to determine whether or not, again, an existing program and a proposed new program are in fact duplicative. Just this past Monday, the PRPAC met and they debated whether or not admissions criteria should be a consideration to determine whether or not a program is duplicative. So you might have two programs that lead to similar, that have similar curriculum, but one program is geared towards students who have a STEM background, and another program that is more inclusive and is not specific about the type of students that they are trying to attract. And so is that enough? Should that be a mandatory consideration in terms of determining whether an existing program is duplicative of a new proposed program? So once we determine whether or not there's duplication, then we would evaluate harm and determine what that harm looks like. And that's why harm is such an integral piece to this, and being able to create very clear and objective criteria for harm.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
Okay, any other questions for Dr. Dow? Okay, seeing none, let's move to the next section dealing with student financial aid systems and safeguards. One of our deputy secretaries is going to present, so.
Thank you so much.
Okay, yep.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the committee. Buenas tardes. It's good to see you again. I'm Elena Quiroz-Lavanes, the Deputy Secretary at MHEC. As we transition to the next slide, I'll be given an update on financial aid. We often discuss financial aid as a policy, but for the families in your districts, it is a lifeline. Today, I'm hoping to walk you through the mechanics of that lifeline, how we get those dollars into students' accounts, the challenges that we are actively working to fix, and the new tools that are making access easier. The slide before you outlines the scope of the funds we administer. Maryland operates one of the most robust state financial aid programs in the country. At MHEC, we manage about $220 million a year to make sure cost isn't a barrier to access or completion for our post-secondary learners. This comprehensive funding supports 27 grants, scholarships, and loan assistant repayment programs, allowing us to distribute over 50,000 awards annually. We launched our One app earlier than ever this year, January 15th, which means students can now apply for everything in one place instead of filling out 20 different applications. A cornerstone of this portfolio is the senatorial and delegate scholarship programs, which provide nearly 19,000 awards to post-secondary learners directly selected by you to meet the specific needs of your districts. At this time, I want to recognize the team at the Office of the Student Financial Assistance, led by Mr. Al Dorsetts, on their efforts to serve Maryland learners. Lastly, I want to highlight our FAFSA completion rate. We're working closely with our partners at the Maryland State Department of Education to raise that number, because every percentage point represents federal dollars going straight to Maryland students. And so to manage that volume of the 50,000 awards and $220 million effectively, we all know that we need an infrastructure that is up to the task. And that brings us to our technology modernization. On the next slide, you'll see a timeline that shows our move from a system built 2 decades ago to a contemporary platform launching later this year. We began the procurement process in 2024, and this timeline reflects our strict adherence to state procurement laws, including the necessary resolution of multiple vendor protests. Because of our implementation timeline, we're still operating on the legacy system of the Maryland College Aid Processing System last August, when a vendor configuration error occurred with the Guaranteed Access Grant. The vendor's system failed to validate critical income data and then, without agency input, triggered an automated recalculation that revoked awards just day before classes began. We made the immediate decision to honor those awards because those students had demonstrated financial need and had already made enrollment decisions. The new Maryland Student Information System, called MDSIS, is a total overhaul launching this fall with validation rules designed to prevent this type of error from ever happening again. It is built for how our learners actually live their lives, which means a fully mobile-friendly portal where they can track their status in real time. Excitingly, one app will also be fully integrated into MDSIS. Last semester, we held focus groups with members of the General Assembly and their staff to build the features that will help constituents the most. We look forward to the continued engagement later this spring and summer as we prepare for a fall 2026 launch. And while the Maryland Student Information System will work to solve technical processing issues, it cannot change the complex life circumstances our students face, which brings us to the question of utilization. On the next slide, I'll talk a bit about the utilization of financial aid dollars that you have entrusted to us. When funds remain unspent, this isn't a lack of effort. It is a management challenge involving 3 specific scenarios. The first scenario is high volume cancellations. We manage our largest programs exactly like the admissions and dual enrollment, the admissions and enrollment management offices at Morgan State University or Salisbury State University or Johns Hopkins University. The university knows that a certain percentage of accepted students will ultimately cancel their enrollment before the semester starts. If they don't account for those cancellations, classrooms would sit half empty. We take the exact same approach in financial aid. We know that 40 to 60% of our initial awards will ultimately be declined or canceled, often due to service obligations or changes in student enrollment. To counter this, at MHEC, we implement an aggressive over-awarding strategy. Furthermore, we award funding year-round. As soon as a cancellation comes in, we move to redeploy those dollars to the next student on the wait list. The challenge for us is not that the money is trapped. We can and do send it out. The challenge is timing. When a cancellation returns funds to us in November, we immediately offer it to a waitlisted student. But by November, that learner has often already signed a private loan, maybe even dropped the class, or worse, decided to pause their post-secondary pursuits. We can still help them pay down the debt, but the window to support their initial access is closed. In the second scenario, we have niche programs like the Maryland Police and Probation Agent Officer Scholarship Program and the Charles Riley Firefighter Scholarship Program, where criteria are so strict that we simply cannot find enough eligible applicants to spend the allocation despite targeted outreach efforts in partnership with state agencies and unions. The third scenario is a stacking problem where students qualify for multiple overlapping awards, which I'll detail on the next slide. On this slide, you can see our 27 distinct programs. When we look at this list, we see the state's incredible commitment to funding specific needs like nursing, teaching, public safety, and supporting our diverse communities. For a student, however, this isn't just a menu of options, it's a complex puzzle. Navigating this list creates a maze where learners often apply for awards just to ensure they're covered. Take a future teacher. They might know the Teaching Fellow Scholarship is now oversubscribed and highly competitive, or consider a veteran or a public safety student. They often qualify for those 2 scholarships I just mentioned and the Ed T. Conroy Memorial Scholarship for service members. So to ensure that they're not left with nothing, students might also apply for those specific scholarships as well as the guaranteed access grant based on their financial need. In many cases, they qualify for all of these programs, and that's a positive outcome. We want to support students as much as possible and minimize their debt. However, every distinct program creates a separate administrative hurdle. While we're doing everything we can to manage this volume, the reality is that this complexity comes at a cost. The more fragmented the system is, the harder it becomes to get dollars out the door quickly. This isn't really just an agency issue, agency resource issue. It's a structural design issue that we need partnership in order to resolve. Fortunately, as you can see on the next slide, the state of Maryland has a strong tradition of solving this exact problem through modernization. The state has consistently worked to streamline access to benefits, including financial aid. In 1990, the state unified separate programs for veterans and public safety families into the Edward T. Conroy Memorial Scholarship. In 2006, the state once again successfully consolidated 7 distinct career awards into the Workforce Shortage Student Assistance Grant. This history offers a proven roadmap for how we can continue to evolve our financial aid system, ensuring that it remains as accessible as ever for the students that are relying on it. So with that, let me turn it over to Secretary Rye for closing comments.
Okay, yeah, we're going to take questions before we turn it over to Secretary Wright. I did have just one question on because you use the word fragmented and, complexity and reform, and those are some buzzwords. I was under the impression that maybe there was going to be a piece of legislation trying to consolidate all these various eligibility requirements. I mean, we haven't seen anything yet. Is that something that, in terms of streamlining and consolidating and some of the words you mentioned earlier, was that in the works for this session, a piece of legislation from you all, or not necessarily the case? Okay. Anybody?
Sure, happy to take this question. And that's a great question, Senator. While we have certainly given some thought to what it would look like to streamline financial aid, there's no specific proposal that has been developed. That is something that we would want to work closely with members of the General Assembly to make sure that the priorities for the state are met.
Okay, just one or two other ones having to do with outreach. So, you talked about some of the problems. It's timing to some extent. I mean, have you guys worked on designing new outreach programs to educate potential folks who are, in the marketplace to know, so they can help navigate? I mean, has there been new outreach programs over the last year or two on that front? And if that's the case, maybe give the committee a little more meat as to what you all been doing.
To elaborate. So I want to recognize that the outreach team at MHEC, we use the word team liberally. It's a team of one. So we have one individual dedicated to that work, and we're grateful to have that pin. We've attempted different strategies as of late. So not only have we increased the outreach and the volume, but we've also strengthened our partnerships with sister agencies. I can give you an example. We're currently working right now with the Department of Housing and Community Development to partner with them to provide better information to students who may be facing homelessness or who may be in the foster care system. So not only are we trying different things and increasing communications via social media and other platforms, we're also leveraging the partnership with our sister agencies to make sure that we can use their resources and the ways that they're plugged into their communities. Another example of that is I know that we've been working with the Department of Public Safety and with different unions to make sure that folks are aware of those scholarships that are made available to them. So again, connecting with folks on the ground to spread our outreach so it's not just limited to the folks that are in our purview.
Take a question from Vice Chair Kagan, then to Senator Carrozza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Elena, sorry, I'm trying to eat breakfast/lunch here. This morning, the committee heard Senate Bill 142, and we all talked about Lincoln Tech yesterday. Just wanted to mention, since it was in public at the hearing today, that Lincoln Tech, we brought up Lincoln Tech again today, and in addition to my being very impressed when I went in early September, the chair has also visited and also was similarly impressed. So there's a conversation going on, and if you look at the bill, we thought there was an opportunity to include them. So I just want to put that out publicly if you've had any additional thoughts since our conversation yesterday, or you can just circle back. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. We
Do you want to reply, or
any
you want
comment, or
more
just
time?
want to take that comment and back to the home office and ponder it? Or
Yeah,
any
I
thoughts
think
on Lincoln Tech?
Yes, as you know, Senator Kagan, you and I talked about this during the summer. And after our conversation yesterday with you, we went back again. Institutions that are from out of state and operating in Maryland, that's the challenge. They're not eligible for legislative scholarships. But we will give you more detailed options and the issues in the next 24 hours.
Okay.
Okay, next 24 hours is great, and I want to flag again that it was SB 142, which might offer a different opportunity.
Yes.
So if you want to take a quick look at that.
Yes, we will
appreciate
quickly
it.
look at that. We'll quickly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Okay, Senator Carrozza.
I want to thank you for this presentation, and I want to, I guess, take this, try to connect some dots. You've got 150, I'm sorry, you have 27 financial aid and loan assistance repayment programs, and they're divided up in the different buckets on your one slide. You had already mentioned that you have the high volume of cancellations. So, and I think I kind of bring it back to the one scholarship program that most of us, are aware of, is it's our Senate Scholarship Program, where in my case, and you've been very helpful, Mr. Secretary, of trying to maximize those available funds, and we all appreciate the fact that there were unspent funds for a period of time that you redistributed across the board, and I can tell you that those unspent funds used in my district were maximized. But going back to the high volume of cancellations, awards that are made, then, cancellations, whether they didn't enroll or they were maybe fully funded with other scholarships. And then you have the 27 financial aid programs. And then you have, and I think it's different in everybody's district, but I have counselors in certain high schools that are extremely knowledgeable about the scholarships that are available, and then I have some that really may not have that much of an awareness. So there's some inequity there, because obviously the students benefit if they have a counselor who knows to steer them to tap the funds that are available. So my question is, what I'm hearing is you're doing a major rehaul on your overall, web, computer system to, I guess, capture and manage all of this. In the meantime, we have these 27, programs. We have some students that, if some of these programs are tapped out, if, like, for instance, if I'm reaching my max on my Senate scholarship, but I want to try to still help a student, there might be all these other programs I could direct them to. So I guess my question is, how is it organized that we can best serve the student who, are trying to find out the availability in order to pursue their academic work or whatever the program might be?
Thanks so much, and that's a great question, and I appreciate your focus on making sure that students have the information that they need in order to apply for financial aid and receive it. I think this is an important time to recognize the partnership we have, first with the Maryland State Department of Education, which I mentioned earlier. We work closely with them and high school supervisors and guidance counselors to provide training on all of the several financial aid programs. We offer this training a couple times a year, and it not only includes information on how to access state financial aid, but it also includes information on how to access federal financial aid. So we're happy to continue that partnership to make sure that guidance counselors feel like they have what they need. We're also working with the Governor's Office of Children to develop a coordinator toolkit for all of the community schools folks, which has been incredibly helpful, again, to make sure that all of our school counselors and guidance counselors are well informed as they're guiding our students who are navigating the system. The final piece here that I would say is One App, right? So I mentioned this briefly in my comments, but the One App does have all of the various programs that are listed on the application. So students can see all of the programs that are available here in the state. And rather than applying 20 different times, they get to apply one time. But I think, the question that we're asking ourselves right now is, are these programs organized in the way that is serving the student well? And that's really the question that we have before us. You have programs that are very similar, that have different requirements, and we do our best to convey what those different requirements are. But at the end of the day, it's still a bit of a maze for our students to have to navigate those 27 programs.
So that's helpful, Mr. Chair, follow up. That's helpful, going back to the One App and going back to how we can serve our student constituents, and whether they're high school graduates or returning veterans or single mothers, all of them should have access to this information. So what I try to do is, if I know that I'm starting to reach my max for my individual Senate scholarship, but I know that these students are in search for financial assistance, whatever program might be available, I normally just encourage them to go ahead and apply, even though I may have limited funds, so then I could at least direct them to what else is available. But I think what I'm hearing you say in addition to that, that if there's this One App that could possibly put them in consideration or be eligible for other scholarship programs?
I think that would be an ideal state for us to get to if the financial aid programs allow for that. So considering what does it mean to have, again, 27 distinct programs. So while they get the opportunity to apply for those 27 distinct programs through a single app, those programs still have their own verification requirements, eligibility requirements that are often set in statute. So what we end up doing is, last year alone, we took almost 37,000 calls from folks across the state to provide over 2,500 hours of direct student assistance. So when we get your constituent inquiries, we jump on the call, we'll do some email exchange to walk them through the system. But again, it's still incredibly difficult to navigate. We can try to make it easy by streamlining the application process, but the program scheme still remains, and they still have different requirements and verification criteria.
But you can at least provide the assistance to say
100%.
If they do the One App, they still have to do the individual applications for the individual scholarship programs. Is that correct?
No, it's one app, and they would have to submit the different verification documents depending on the program. So most programs require institutional certifications. There's some programs that have service obligations, which students have to complete that ahead of time. So it's one app, different scholarships have different requirements. That is still in statute, that has not changed. And we do our best to communicate to the students exactly what the funds are available for. So a perfect example of this in outreach working is the Teaching Fellows program. We know that there's a critical shortage in the state, and luckily there's been an investment to make sure that there is funding available for our teaching folks who are interested in pursuing an education to become educators. We will jump on the phone and provide that kind of input to the student and saying, hey, based on what you're sharing with us, it seems like you can demonstrate some financial need. Go ahead and apply for the Guaranteed Access Grant. At the same time, knowing that you want to become a future educator, go ahead and apply for Teaching Fellows. So with that information that we get from the student, we provide one-on-one support and guidance.
That's very helpful. And one last point, since you're limited on the number of staff that you have providing this assistance, could information be shared, or at least maybe more of an effort to educate, whether it's counselors or who's at the community college level or across the board, so maybe they can share some of that same information. If you're just, it sounds like you have a wave, coming at you and you have very limited staff, maybe we can get some other people that can share that same information.
Senator, that is a great suggestion, and I think that is definitely something that we can continue to do. Another group of partners that are critically important are our friends in the nonprofit sector. We have the Next Generation Scholars Program, the Maryland Higher Education College Access and Outreach Program, the College Preparation and Intervention Program. And so these are grant funds that are administered by the agency, are awarded to nonprofit partners, and they also help us spread the message around financial aid so we can continue to leverage that community and network as well, and do a bit more to make sure that they feel like they have the resources they need to provide that on-the-ground guidance.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, before we go back to Secretary Rye for closing comments, just two things. I mean, we've had a lot of chat about AI, and I haven't heard, you have personnel issues and talking about, the quantity. Are you all making attempts to use AI to make your operation a little more efficient? And if so, could you give the committee just a little insight into that? And then I have one final question as well. Anybody
Sure,
want to
I'm happy
Sure.
to chime in, and I am very grateful that the state has a partnership with Google Gemini. I use Gemini. The secretary was talking about ChatGPT. I use Gemini on a regular basis. The Office of the Deputy Secretary is quite small, and so we use it to augment our operations, whether it's analysis, drafting information. Obviously, it also requires verification. It does tend to give you a bit of what you like, but it does. We like to say that we practice what we preach. So earlier we were having a conversation about the need to make sure that our institutions of higher education were preparing students for an AI future. We certainly have been doing that here at MHEC. And on that note, I would say that we would welcome a continued conversation on the state plan for higher education. That was really exciting at the beginning of our briefing.
Before I go to Senator Brooks, just one kind of loose end. Your MD CAPS, the program, your financial aid system, there was at least one case this year where there was an error in the system and y'all were not necessarily notified. MHEC was not aware that there was some errors in that system. How did that happen, that you all wouldn't have been notified or weren't aware of some of the eligibility requirement information in there was not accurate? Whatever you got in terms of explaining that would be also helpful in our role as something of an oversight committee here.
Sure. So the error was triggered by a change in the financial aid application, so known as FAFSA. And basically, the income criteria were unfortunately calculated incorrectly. The vendor, when they recognized this bug in their script, ended up recalculating all of the awards without notifying MHEC. When they recalculated those awards, that led to the revocation for several hundreds of students. We have now put a system in place, and there are several safeguards and internal controls that would prevent the vendor from ever recalculating awards again without approval from MHEC first. And that was a very timely lesson as we were in the middle, as I mentioned, of developing the new Maryland student information system. So now the platform will never really be allowed to trigger that kind of recalculation without an approval from MHEC staff.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that. Let's go to Senator Brooks.
Thanks, Chair. I'm trying to peer into my crystal ball and see what the horizon looks like. and what way this is going to impact the students, especially with the 27 financial aids and loan assistance program. Right now, the reduced reduced state support, Governor Moore's proposed 2026 budget includes like $100 million in cuts to the university system of Maryland. Okay, there are going to be Pell Grant restrictions. The new federal rules for 2026 may disqualify students from receiving Pell Grants if they receive non-federal aid covering their full cost of attendance. The Pell First calculation changes. Maryland may need to adjust how it calculates state aid, such as the Howard P. Rawlings Guaranteed Access Grant, by evaluating students' need before considering the Pell Grant. And now, like foreign income, it must be included in 2026 in the if the students will be in the aid calculation, I should say. So now you've got higher cost, reduced aid. So the combination of inflation, tuition increases, and tighter eligibility, that's got to have an impact on the aid that the students will be receiving. So any comments you can offer on that would be appreciated.
Sure, I'm happy to comment, and thank you for the question, Senator. What we're seeing are the largest changes to federal financial aid that this country has ever seen. And we're seeing that on an expedited timeline. When you talk about changes to financial aid, and we talked a bit about some of those timelines earlier today, you need a bit of a runway. But the federal government has given us all of 12 months to do this. And I'm proud to say that this state is probably one of the few in the country, if probably not the only one in the country, that is prepared for implementation on July 1st, 2026. This is a good time to recognize the partnership that we have with the Governor's Workforce Development Board and Rachel Stevens Parker, who is leading the coordination efforts on this front, not only between our agencies, but also the institutions. She also represented the state and workforce development boards across the country and negotiated rulemaking where she was able to safeguard some pretty important state level protections. As we speak, the team in the Office of Student Financial Assistance, which I know they're watching, they're finalizing an institutional readiness assessment, which we will release at the end of this week. That assessment will go to all of our institutions of higher education to make sure that they are ready for implementation and that they are signaling to us what are some of the changes that might be needed in our regulatory landscape to ensure that we do not lose any federal money. There are several ways to address the concern around making sure that our students have access to Pell. And we have been working closely with the institutions to make sure that we can, in fact, basically adjust the awards so that no Pell and federal money is left on the table. So we have a bit of a plan. I wouldn't say a bit. We have a plan of attack. We're working closely with the institutions. I wish we had more time, but we'll be ready on July 1st for implementation.
Good. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Chair.
Any other questions before we turn it back to the Secretary for some closing comments? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Secretary, any closing thoughts before we adjourn?
Absolutely, sir. Thank you very much. And I'll close with just a few takeaways based on what I was hearing. First, I want you to know that MHEC is executing the responsibility entrusted to it by the General Assembly across a system that is large, diverse, and operationally complex. And we are doing so with a lean administrative footprint. Second, Maryland is making measurable progress. Statewide planning aligned to workforce and economic priorities is advancing toward adoption in June. That is our state plan for higher education. House Bill 1244 implementation is active across all its major components, and we are strengthening the integrity and reliability of financial aid administration while continuing to support tens of thousands of students each year. Third, this briefing highlights where partnership matters most going forward. refining academic program approval implementation, and the definition of items like harm to the state or harm to the students, sustaining the modernization of the financial aid infrastructure through MDSIS, and addressing structural factors that affect utilization so appropriated funds translate more consistently into paid awards for students. We value the committee's engagement and welcome ongoing guidance as we balance access, equity, fiscal stewardship, and long-term system sustainability. Thank you, and we are very happy with our conversation today.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you to members of the committee, and that completes our work for today.